Regarding Salesforce, what's the key that the average day trader is going to be looking for? And what are the more perhaps experienced or more professional traders, not saying that one's better than the other, by the way, but the more experienced traders are going to be looking for?
Well, I think when you think about Salesforce here, I think what you got to look out for is, I don't even think the numbers matter as much as, maybe they once did. And the biggest reason for that is, I think right now you're at a point in time for these SaaS-oriented companies right now where the street just doesn't believe that they're not going to be somewhat impacted by this, this shift towards AI and that those business models won't be disrupted. So even if you kind of get a beat for Salesforce and other SaaS-oriented companies, whether it be an Adobe or what have you over the next couple of weeks, I think more importantly is going to be the AI strategy that they articulate, right? And if Salesforce can continue to show that they are, witnessing greater momentum for their agentic AI platform, which we think they are, that's going to, we think, help the story, especially at these valuations for Salesforce. But that being said, I mean, the revenue run rate for Salesforce's AI-oriented businesses is so low at this point in time. We're talking low single digit, in terms of percentage of sales. And it's probably not going to be a bigger contributor until, late 2026 into 2027. You're going to have to be a patient investor, I think, for this story to really work out here over the next kind of 2 to 3 years.
Well, let's talk about the next 2 to 3 years. Does the Informatica acquisition or the Agentforce roadmap provide enough confidence to view this as still a core holding?
I think the jury is still out, to be honest with you. Our view is, listen, the market is extremely competitive. When you look at where Salesforce does have a competitive advantage, they were early to the game in terms of rolling out an agentic AI platform. They also have, an immense amount of data out there on the enterprise space. And that is a huge advantage in this, broader AI spectrum. And then, of course, the valuation, again, is something that shouldn't be normally dismissed because, from a historical context, when you look at these SaaS-oriented companies, they are probably as most hated as I've ever seen, in my career. So I think that you're at a point right now where I think that Salesforce will be able to get this figured out. I think they'll be a beneficiary in terms of, this kind of disruption that we're seeing across the AI space. But in the same respect, when you look at their core subscriber platform, right, there is going to be some disruption there, and they're going to have to contend with that. And whether or not we finally see a bottom in terms of the growth rates here or stabilization, I think is going to be an important point, something that investors are going to be looking out for this quarter.
When you say, did I hear you correctly, most hated that you've seen in your career, why is that?
I think there are a number of issues going on as far as this, this whole idea that, AI, you kind of go back, 14, 15 years ago, and there was this whole thesis, Mark Andreessen came out with where, software was going to eat the world, right? And then Jensen back in, I think, 2017 came out and said, yes, software is eating the world, but AI is going to eat software. And, a big reason for that is when you think about AI, AI is leading to productivity improvements in many respects, and those productivity improvements ultimately mean lower seat growth. Lower seat growth means lower potential subscription growth for a company like an Adobe or Salesforce and others that are out there. The other thing out there is there are also greater investments going towards AI. And maybe less emphasis and focus on maybe some of these SaaS-oriented investments at this point in time, especially in a post-pandemic world where there was such an elevated amount of investments and spend going on on the SaaS side of things. So there's this kind of right-sizing in terms of growth rates and what the landscape really should look like in this more kind of AI environment. But I think also important to note, in favor of what Salesforce is doing right now, right, is the fact that they do have an AI offering. It is more consumption driven, so it is more usage based in nature. So as that ramps up, they are going to get higher revenue tied to the AI opportunity. It's just going to take time.
But as you talk about a restructuring, is Salesforce at risk of being structurally de-emphasized in individual or rather institutional portfolios?
there's a risk of it, right? And there's also this whole do-it-yourself model that's out there that, other enterprises are kind of working on it. They're, looking to find ways to do it themselves as well. So, and you've also got competitive pressures out there, right? The OpenAIs and others of the world are coming out with offerings, whether it be, that to compete against the likes of a Salesforce or Adobe or other SaaS-oriented platforms, in nature. So clearly there are a number of risks that are out there. And so there is, to your point, yes, is there a risk of that? Absolutely.